Black Clover, One Piece, two of the most successful shonen series of all time, with incredibly powerful antagonists. Today we settle the heated topic of who would win in a battle between Lucius Zogratis and none other than the infamous Blackbeard, with Blackbeard being the mysterious antagonist that made his mark after stealing his fruit from Thatch and having ambitions to become the Pirate King. On the other hand, we have Lucius, who is the main antagonist of Black Clover, the final member of the Zogratis family, who took control of Julius's body and wishes to reshape the world as we know it. Beginning with Teach, his attack potency is going to come from how he unleashes the power of the Guruguru, whose previous wielder had the power to destroy the world. Even without ever having used the fruit before, he's able to shift massive tectonic plates. The reason why this casual feat in comparison to the likes of current Blackbeard is so damn impressive is because it's implied countless times throughout the series that the One Piece planet is much larger than Earth, such as it existing within its own Divine system with multiple moons, and even a moon with its own moon. Using the Sandora River in Alabasta, which was stated to be 50 kilometers in diameter, a map of the Grand Line as well as a pixel summation calculator, we're able to determine the mass, volume, and gravitational binding energy of the planet. Long story short, it would take the equivalent energy to that of destroying a dwarf star to destroy the One Piece planet. Using horizon distances by scaling off Long Wing Long Island and the known diameter of Foxy's ship, we find that the Blackbeard quake feat, with him as the hypocenter and epicenter of the quake, took high multi-continental level energy. Now, there are two ways to interpret this information. The first is the lowballed interpretation, which is we imply the Sagan standard and say that given the strongest feat in One Piece is billions of times weaker than the gravitational binding energy of the One Piece planet, it's unlikely that he could actually destroy it. Or two, that he could, given that he was able to scar an on-guard Shanks who could clash with Whitebeard on his medication. One could also argue that given he's a god tier, the Sagan standard can't really be applied here, as the point of contention comes from proving the consistency of feats from a god tier. Logically speaking, as a god tier, we don't need to question consistency, as they are simply above the rest. Blackbeard, upon acquiring the fruit, also says he could have his way with the world, and with amplified pain, he's eating quake tremors to the brain from Whitebeard. Now, on Lucius's end, during chapter 352, Arce is able to push away the Yorioku cloud that had been covering feudal Japan in a matter of seconds, a feat requiring an energy output of 664 petatons of TNT. To put this into perspective, that's quite literally enough energy to split the world in half. And even after casually outputting this level of energy and the stakes of the war, he still hasn't returned from the Land of Sun, implying that Lucius still outscales him. It would also be consistent just upscaling from the country level feats performed early pre-time skip, chain scaling using Sally, Zora's chat magic, and Meryliona's multipliers. For the Black Clover speed and hacks portion of the video, I'd like to welcome Virum. Take it away.
Even disregarding Asta's incredible feat, much earlier on, weaker characters could destroy entire countries, such as the Ancient Demon. And lived when he fully awakened as an elf, combined the power of 10 other elves in order to fight Zagrid. That doesn't even match up to the likes of the Dark Triad. Skip a little forward and we meet the Ryuzen. The Ryuzen are top class mages who can control ki and exert up to dozens of times of the original power using an ability called Zetten. Now we use dozens of times because it's a pretty consistent translation instead of using the hundreds of times. So these high tier characters are now in the ranges of multi-continental. Now let's talk about speed. Early on, we have very impressive light speed feats as well as a handful of light speed statements. In the elf arc, we have an amazing feat with Henry, which comes out to FTL plus. The base triad outscales Zagrid, and they also outscale Henry, meaning they'd be at least FTL plus while in base. And Magnus split up Dante's magic using Soul Chain Deathmatch. He went from 100% to 50% upon losing half his magic. Magna was his equal in terms of both AP and speed, meaning that Dante from 50 to 100 is at least twice as fast and twice as strong. So at 100%, Dark Triad should get a 4 times increase, placing the Dark Triad further into FTO plus. Then we have the twins who outscale even at 100%. The twins then fuse and gain a 2 times amp, which is in both power and speed. This places the fused twins at 179 times FTL. We have base Lucius taking down half manifested Lucifero in the underworld. As we already know, half Lucifero outscales even the fused twins, which would place half Lucifero at the MFTL range, and Lucius absorbing all of Lucifero 100% and stacks that upon his normal magic. So that places true human Lucius at 716 times FTL.
Moving on to One Piece speed, characters like an out-of-shape retired Rayleigh are able to perform FTL feats, like intercepting Kizaru's Sacred Jewel, which comes from a being who moves at light speed, and an Egghead base Sanji is able to outspeed lasers. Both feats to which Blackbeard should easily be far above, and I would even go so far as to put Teach somewhere in the high FTL ranges of speed. Unfortunately, this is going to be where the OP speed scaling will stop. Now, many may make the argument that Luffy, being relative to Zoro who dodged Kuma, can just use the alleged Gear 2 multiplier even either from the Doriki method, the dialbook statement, or Burndy wall to drastically inflate top tier speed, each of these metrics of quantification reveal themselves to be inconsistent when put under closer inspection. The Doriki method, for those of you that don't know, is based on Fuguro with his eyes closed tanking attacks from fellow CP9 members and attributing power levels in terms of marines with guns. Now the argument comes from the fact that Jabra says it only measures physical ability, and many have argued this to be a speed multiplier, as speed can be a possible physical ability or power definition. Now although this is a possible definition, to make the claim that this would be representative of a speed increase seems implausible via Arkham's Razor, which suggests that the simplest explanation is often the correct one. In this case, the relation of power to a marine with a firearm implies that the system measures a person's ability to exert physical force and relative combat effectiveness rather than speed or agility. Now the reason I don't accept the French dialbook for Gear 2 is that it is mistranslated from Japanese to French to English. When people take direct translations without understanding the translator's intent, it's easy to miss idiomatic expressions and cultural nuances unique to different languages, which can lead to misunderstandings. A good example is in French we say "je le cafard" when we're feeling blue or down, but relying on the direct translation here would make us seem like we're saying "I have the cockroach," which is quite evidently a mistranslation despite being hyperliteral due to the lack of understanding of cultural nuances and linguistics. And in this same light, an English audience has misrepresented the use of "les couplets" in search for quantification for Gear 2, which doesn't exist in the raw Japanese. The raw Japanese only describes a drastic increase in overall physical ability, with no kanji for velocity or any form of quantification for that matter to be found. The reason why we prioritize the Japanese to English translations rather than a translation of Great Steps to begin with is exactly to avoid issues like this, as it's the path of the fewest assumptions and we don't need to account for things like the translator's intent, which was simply to describe a drastic increase in Luffy's overall capabilities. Finally, Burndy Ward. Not only is 3D2Y not written or supervised by Oda, by applying the principle of induction to the scene in question, it reveals to us that the 100-fold increase is not representative of Luffy's sustained speed. The circumstances that lead up to Luffy's Gear 2, which is supposed to keep up with the normal fruit, such as Burndy's significant damage, Luffy's emotional amps from dealing with the loss of Ace, receiving his flare as well as the support of his Nakama, suggests that the increase in speed was only situational and temporary. Just by employing basic skepticism, it's easy to see that a substantial boost would require equally substantial evidence, which is lacking, and it's blatantly shown to be incoherent throughout the preceding fights, making the explanation that encompasses Luffy's ever-improving haki and temporary emotional amps all the more likely. With attack potency in Blackbeard's favor and with speed disproportionately in Lucius's side, the question then comes down to, does Blackbeard's hacks account for the speed differential, and can Lucius effectively damage Blackbeard if he can blitz him? Blackbeard, being the world of the Guruguru no Mi, can produce large-scale shockwaves. He also possesses the Yami Yami no Mi, which allows him to release black gravitational smog and absorb or nullify abilities that make contact with the palm of his hands, suck in objects, and use advanced conquerors, which is internal organ damage durability negation. So how does Lucius's hacks fare against Blackbeard? Back to you, Virum.
Lucius has access to many types of magic, including time, soul, and gravity magic. He has a tendency to want to finish things quickly, as seen with Julius or with Lucius, how he instantly teleported behind Yuno and tried to erase him out of existence. If not going for the kill, he'll go for the time loop, and then he'll put you under his control using his soul magic. Granted, Blackbeard has some resistance to mind manip and his own gravity abilities. Lucius has absorbed Lucifero, someone who could exert gravity from purely existing and can flatten the captains with just a flick of his finger.
All things considered, Blackbeard characteristically tanks attacks regardless of the severity of the situation, a tendency especially detrimental when faced with an overwhelming speed difference. Lucius has future sight, multiple degrees of time manipulating existence ratio to which Blackbeard has no counter for, which means that he would simply just get rewound out of existence despite the AP difference. Blackbeard's best attacks, all of which are very large scale, are shown to take significant durations of time to activate, that time in which he will not have. So all things considered, Lucius wins. If you made it this far into this video, make sure to drop a like and subscribe. Also, huge thanks to Virum for helping out. His links will also be in the description. And for those of you that want to request a versus battle, my Cash App link is in the description. Please be patient with your video, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.